A 10-year-old boy, a piece of bread, and a choice no one can explain. This is a miracle of the Virgin Mary that will make you rethink everything you know about faith. But before we continue, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Have you ever truly been hungry? Not that kind of I skipped breakfast hunger, but the kind that aches in your stomach and won't leave your mind all day. Michael knew that feeling well. Every day after school he walked 40 minutes to get home, and every day he held tightly to that small piece of bread left over from lunch, because he knew it might be the only thing he would eat until nightfall. 10 years old. Do you remember what it was like to be 10? You were probably worried about video games, playing outside, or which cartoon you'd watch on TV. Michael didn't have time for that. Michael had grown-up worries. His mother worked cleaning houses. She left before dawn and returned late at night. Those hands that should have been cooking for him, playing with him, were scrubbing floors in houses where no one would ever even know her name. And his father, well, we'll get to his father soon. On the way home, there was a street Michael always passed. Old houses, simple gardens, the kind of quiet place where nothing special ever happens. But in one of those gardens, right near the fence, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary. Small, faded. The kind of statue you walk by every day and don't even notice. But Michael noticed. And every day he stopped. He would stand there, looking at the statue. Sometimes his lips moved, whispering a prayer. Other times he just stood in silence, as if talking without words. What goes through the mind of a 10-year-old who stops every day to pray? What could he be asking for? Because there was something heavy, something that hurt so deeply he needed to share it with someone. And if he couldn't share it with his mother, because she was already too tired, already hurting too much, then he shared it with the Virgin Mary. Have you ever carried a burden that no one around you knew about? Ever pretended everything was fine while inside you were falling apart? Michael pretended every single day. The house was small, too hot in the summer, too cold in the winter, but it was home. It was where they tried to be a family. When Michael came home from school, his mother was never there, so he'd walk into that silent house, throw his backpack on the couch, and head straight to his room. No, wait. He didn't go to his room. He went to another room, the one whose door was always closed. The room from which came those sounds Michael had learned to recognize from afar. Coughing. That deep, prolonged cough that sounded like it was tearing pieces from the inside. You know that sound? That cough that isn't a cold, isn't the flu. It's something worse. Something that doesn't get better. Something that keeps getting worse. Day after day, week after week. Michael's father was in that room. David. 38 years old, but he looked 60. He had been a mechanic, good at what he did. Worked hard, fixed cars, came home with grease on his hands but money in his pocket, until he started getting tired easily. Then came the shortness of breath. Then the cough. Then that pain in his chest that wouldn't go away. And when they finally went to the doctor, because hospitals are expensive, so you only go when you can't take it anymore, the diagnosis came like a sentence. A serious disease in the lungs. Aggressive. Already spread. 6 months, the doctor said. Maybe less. 6 months. Can you imagine hearing that? Can you imagine being the wife and hearing that in 6 months you'll be alone? Or worse, can you imagine being the son and hearing that in 6 months you won't have a father anymore? Michael heard it. He was in the waiting room when his mother came out of the doctor's office crying. He didn't need to ask. Just by looking at her face, he knew. From that day on, everything changed. His father couldn't work anymore. Spent most of his time in bed. Sometimes he'd sit at the edge, try to drink some coffee, but it wouldn't go down. Food had no taste. The body no longer accepted anything. And the worst part, he was losing weight. Week after week, that man who had once been strong, who could lift a car engine on his own, who used to toss Michael into the air when he was little, that man was turning into a shadow. His mother took on more jobs, cleaned in the morning, cleaned in the afternoon, because the medicine was expensive, because the appointments were expensive. And Michael became the man of the house at 10 years old. He woke up alone, made his own lunch, went to school alone, came back alone, and when he got home he'd walk into that room and sit beside his father. Sometimes they talked about school, about how the day had gone, but most of the time they just sat there in silence. Michael would hold his father's hand, that hand that was getting thinner, colder, and his father would look at him, and you could see in his eyes that sadness of knowing he wouldn't see his son grow up, wouldn't teach him how to drive, wouldn't see him graduate, wouldn't be there when Michael needed a father. 6 months, 2 had already gone by. There are days that start normal and end up changing everything. You don't know when you wake up that the day will be different. But later, when you look back, you see it. It was that day. That was the day everything changed. For Michael it was a Tuesday, an ordinary Tuesday, gray sky. That late autumn chill that already hints winter is coming. Michael went to school as usual. During break time, he sat in his usual corner and opened his lunchbox, a piece of bread. That was it. Bread with a bit of butter. He looked at that bread and thought of his father. Thought about how his father couldn't even eat anymore. Thought about how his mother had left again without breakfast because she didn't have time. Thought about how hard things had become. And for the first time in a long time, Michael cried. There, sitting alone in the corner of the schoolyard with that piece of bread in his hands, he cried. It wasn't the cry of a child who fell and scraped his knee. It was a cry of despair, of helplessness, of knowing that no matter how much you want to, there's nothing you can do to change what's happening. Have you ever cried like that? The kind of cry that comes from so deep inside that even breathing becomes hard? Michael quickly wiped his face. Because men don't cry, right? That's what his father always said. But his father said that back when he was still strong. Now his father cried too. Michael had heard it through the door. Classes were over. Michael put the whole piece of bread back in his lunchbox. He hadn't managed to eat. And he began the walk back home. 40 minutes. Long enough to think. Too long to think. He thought about his father, about how every night before sleeping he prayed asking God to make his father better. But his father wasn't getting better, only worse. Was God listening? Did miracles really exist? Michael wanted to believe. He needed to believe. Because if he didn't believe in anything, what was left? And then he reached that street, the one with the statue. But today was different. Today he didn't just look from afar. Today he stopped in front of the fence, opened the small gate, it was never locked, and walked into the garden. His heart was pounding hard, not from fear. He approached the statue. Up close you could see the details, the cracks in the concrete, the paint peeling off, but you could also see the face, that serene face, those eyes that seemed to look straight into you. Michael knelt on the damp grass, opened his lunchbox, took out the bread, and looked at that bread in his hands. Michael was hungry, very hungry. But there was something greater than his hunger there. There was faith, or despair, or maybe both together. He broke the bread in half. He placed one half at the feet of the statue of the Virgin Mary, carefully, as if offering something sacred. Because it was sacred, it was all he had. Then he looked up into the eyes of that faded concrete Virgin Mary and began to pray. Tears ran down his face. Please, please, save my father. I'll give half of everything I have. Just, please, don't let him die. I need him. We need him. Please. How long did he stay there? 5 minutes? 10? It felt like forever. And when he finally stood up, he took the other half of the bread and ate it slowly. Each bite was a prayer. Each swallowed piece an act of faith. He wiped his face, adjusted his backpack, and left the garden. He didn't look back. The next day Michael passed by the garden again, and his heart almost stopped. The bread was gone. He stopped, looked closely, searched the grass around the statue. Nothing. It had vanished. The first thought that came to mind, some bird took it. Obviously, right? It had been there all night. Some animal must have taken it. Or maybe it had rained? No, it hadn't rained. Maybe someone who cared for the garden had cleaned it. That made sense. Michael shook his head. Silly thought. Of course it had been a bird. He went home, walked in, threw his backpack on the couch, and heard something strange. Or rather, he didn't hear it. There was no coughing. Usually, as soon as he arrived, he could already hear his father's cough, that constant cough that echoed through the house. But now, silence. Michael's heart started racing. No, 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 please, no. He ran to his parents' bedroom, threw the door open. His father was sleeping peacefully, his chest rising and falling in a calm rhythm. Michael stood in the doorway just watching, waiting for his father to wake up coughing, as he always did, but his father kept sleeping. When his mother got home that night, Michael told her, Dad slept all afternoon, didn't cough once. She touched her husband's forehead. No fever. She looked at her son with that mix of hope and fear of being fooled by it. He must be exhausted. His body needs rest. But in her eyes, Michael saw the same thing he felt. What if? The next few days were strange. His father started sleeping better. He no longer woke up every half hour coughing. The first few nights, his mother kept checking on him constantly, afraid that maybe he had, well, you can imagine the fear. But he was sleeping. Just sleeping. After 3 or 4 days, something else happened. His father sat up in bed on his own. It wasn't that enormous effort as before. He just sat up. "Are you okay?" his mother asked, almost running into the room when she saw it. I'm feeling a little less tired." A little less tired. For someone who couldn't even get up to go to the bathroom alone, that was a lot. The following week, he ate, for real. Not those 2 spoonfuls he forced down just to make his wife happy. He ate. A whole bowl of soup. Well, almost. "It tastes different," he said, and even smiled. A small, weak smile, but still a smile. Michael watched all of this from the doorway. He didn't say anything, but inside he was screaming, "Please keep going. Please don't stop." And then something happened that no one expected. His mother came home one Saturday afternoon on a day she usually worked until late, and she had a smile on her face. "What happened?" Michael asked. "Mrs. Peterson, she's going to raise my salary." Silence. "What?" "She said I'm the best employee she's ever had, that the house has never been so clean, and that she's going to pay me more." His mother started crying, but it was the kind of crying that comes from relief. The kind you cry when you're drowning and someone throws you a rope. "This means we'll be able to buy your father's medicine without falling behind on the other bills. We'll be able to buy real food. We'll be able to—" She couldn't finish. She just hugged Michael and cried, and Michael, holding his mother tight, thought about the statue, thought about the bread. Coincidence, right? It had to be coincidence. But things kept changing. 2 weeks after that day, the day Michael shared the bread, his father got out of bed, by himself, walked to the living room. Slowly, holding on to the wall, but he walked. He sat on the couch, watched TV with Michael. "How was school today, champ?" "Champ." His father hadn't called him that in months. "It was good, Dad." "You're growing up, you know that? When I get better, we'll do all those things I promised. We'll go fishing. We'll go to a baseball game. Dad, do you think you're going to get better?" His father looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in a long while, there was something different in that look. There was hope. "You know what? I think I will. I don't know how, but I think I will." 1 month later, It was time for another appointment. Routine checkups had become part of their lives, going to the hospital, taking tests, listening to doctors say things they didn't quite understand but knew were bad. But this time his mother was nervous in a different way. "He's better," she told Dr. Harrison when they arrived. "He's sleeping, he's eating, he's even walking a little." Dr. Harrison was a man in his 50s, gray-haired, with that serious demeanor of a doctor who had learned not to get his hopes up. He examined David, listened to his lungs, and frowned. "Let's redo the tests." And there were many: X-rays, CT scans, blood work. They spent hours there. Michael was in the waiting room with his mother. She was holding his hand so tightly it hurt, but he didn't complain. When Dr. Harrison finally came out with that folder full of papers, his face looked confused. "You can come in." They sat down. The doctor placed the scans on the lighted board on the wall, lung images. "This," he pointed, "these are from 2 months ago. All dark, spots everywhere. The lungs look destroyed. And these are from today. There were still spots, but fewer. Noticeably fewer. I don't know how to explain this," Dr. Harrison said. "And when a doctor admits that, it's serious. The lesions have reduced. Lung function has improved." "Is that good?" his mother asked, barely breathing. "It's extraordinary. This kind of condition doesn't improve like this." "It doesn't improve at all, actually. His prognosis was, well, you know what it was. 6 months. And almost 3 had already passed." Dr. Harrison stared at the scans for a long time. Then he looked at David sitting there, breathing, alive. "I've seen a lot in medicine, but sometimes, very rarely, we see something we can't explain. They call it spontaneous remission. But this—" he shook his head. "I've never seen remission like this. Not in this type of disease." They left the hospital in stunned silence. It wasn't joy yet. It was shock, fear of believing. In the car, the mother driving, the father in the front seat, Michael in the back, no one spoke. Until the father broke the silence. "Someone's watching over us. Someone's taking care of us." And Michael, in the back seat, thought, "I know who it is." Months went by. His father kept getting better, one day at a time, but better. 3 months after that appointment, he was walking without holding onto the walls. 4 months, he had his appetite back, started gaining weight again. 5 months, the coughing had almost completely disappeared. And then came the 6th month, the deadline the doctors had given. And David was sitting at the table having dinner with his family. He wasn't cured. He still took medication, still got tired easily, but he was alive. He was laughing. He was living. Michael ate quietly. He had kept that secret all this time. He had never told anyone about the bread, about the statue, about the wish. Because if he told, and it didn't work, it would hurt more. And if he told, and it did work, well, he didn't know why, but he hadn't told, until he couldn't hold it in anymore. In the middle of that dinner, with his father laughing at a silly joke his mother had told, with life feeling almost normal again, Michael started to cry. It wasn't sadness. It was relief, gratitude, everything he had held inside for months. "Michael, what is it, son?" And then he let it all out. I did something. About 6 months ago, there was a statue of the Virgin Mary, on the way to school. And I stopped there every day, and one day I gave her half of my bread. The parents stopped eating. They looked at their son. "I asked her to save you, Dad. I asked so much, and I gave half of my bread because it was all I had to give. And the next day, you started to get better." Silence at the table. The mother looked at the father. The father looked at the mother. Then both looked at their son. The father stood up from the chair, went to Michael, knelt beside him, and hugged his son. "You saved my life, son." "It wasn't me. It was the Virgin Mary. She heard you. She heard the prayer of a 10-year-old boy who gave all he had. And the three of them stayed there, embraced, crying. The following Sunday they went together. Father, Mother, and Michael. They walked down that street to that garden. The father was slow, but he was walking. 6 months earlier, he couldn't get out of bed. Now he was there, standing, breathing. They entered the garden, for the first time, the whole family together. And they knelt before that small statue of the Virgin Mary, faded, made of cracked concrete. The father looked at the Virgin Mary and began to speak. It wasn't a memorized prayer. It came from his heart. Thank you for hearing my son. Thank you for giving me more time. I don't know why, I don't know how, but thank you. I'll use every day you've given me. I'll be the best father I can be. I'll be the best husband. I'll live in a way that honors this gift. The mother just cried, holding her husband's hand. Michael touched the base of the statue, the same spot where he had placed half of his bread. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for listening. And at that moment a gentle breeze passed through the garden. The leaves of the surrounding trees rustled. The sun, which had been hidden behind the clouds, suddenly appeared and illuminated the statue. Coincidence? Maybe. But for those who believe, there is no such thing as coincidence. Today, years later, David is still alive. He went back to work, not as a mechanic. His lungs can't handle heavy labor anymore, but he works. He lives, he laughs. He wakes up every day and gives thanks for being alive. The family keeps the old medical exams, the ones that said he had no chance. Because when life gets hard, when they forget how blessed they are, they look at those images and remember. A miracle of the Virgin Mary happened. Michael still passes by that garden. He still stops for a few seconds, still touches the base of the statue, still gives thanks. He only had half a loaf of bread, but he gave it with his whole heart. And the Virgin Mary answered in a way no one will ever fully explain. Doctors call it spontaneous remission. The family calls it a miracle. And you? What do you call it? If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Write in the comments about a miracle you've witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.